A seemingly ordinary meeting between Truong's mother and the doctor unexpectedly reveals a secret that leaves her in shock. Her son's girlfriend, Tieu, is pregnant, even though Truong has been missing for months. Those small signs she once ignored, the nausea, the evasive looks, the repeated refusals to see a doctor, now come together into a truth she can no longer deny. Is the baby growing inside Tieu truly her son's child? Or is there a darker mystery behind Truong's disappearance? Everything began with a sincere love, but it might end with a truth that destroys them all. If you want to know what Truong's mother will do when she finally faces Tieu, don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow the next episode. That morning, a light mist still hung in the air as Aunt Hao led Dewey out of the narrow alley. The familiar road to school was still wet from the night's rain. Dewey held her hand, his small backpack swinging behind him, eyes wide with curiosity. Before heading to class, they stopped by a little porridge shop at the end of the alley, steam rising thick and fragrant, wrapping the air in warmth. Aunt Hao chose a corner table and ordered a bowl of hot porridge for Dewey, with a small sausage on the side, his favorite treat. The shop owner smiled and brought over a steaming bowl of smooth white porridge. Dewey carefully stirred it with his spoon, blowing on each bite, his tiny hands trembling a little in the cold air. Aunt Hao wiped his mouth with a napkin, her voice gentle, though her eyes couldn't hide a trace of worry. People often say, love doesn't have to be grand. Sometimes it's as simple as a morning meal, every small gesture filled with care. With each spoonful, Dewey's face grew brighter, and every time he took another bite, Aunt Hao smiled proud, yet quietly relieved. This winter was colder than usual, and Dewey had just recovered from being sick. All she wanted was for him to have enough energy to laugh, to play, to be healthy like any other child. When the bowl was nearly empty, Dewey picked up the sausage, touched it to his lips, then quickly pulled back because it was too hot. Aunt Hao blew on it gently and placed it back in front of him. His eyes lit up that pure, innocent brightness of a child who knows he's loved. Outside, more students began arriving, their laughter filling the narrow alley. Aunt Hao checked her watch, urged Dewey to finish up, then carefully wiped his mouth, fixed his collar, and handed him his backpack. "Time for school," she said softly, her voice carrying a quiet pride. On the way, Dewey held her hand, humming a little tune as they walked. He stopped at the school gate, where his teacher stood smiling and waving. He turned back to look at his aunt, just a quick glance, but enough to melt any grown-up's heart. Then he walked inside, still a little clumsy, but with eyes full of confidence. Aunt Hao watched until he disappeared behind the classroom building. The morning carried on like any other, except that inside her heart was a small, steady warmth. That simple bowl of porridge wasn't just breakfast, it was a rare, peaceful moment in a rushing world where the simplest form of love felt almost sacred. Tieu carried 2 heavy baskets on her shoulders, walking slowly through the muddy alley. Her faint voice echoed among the rush of people. Fresh oranges. Early season oranges here. The sound was as fragile as the bit of strength left in the young woman who was about to give birth. Her growing belly made every step feel heavier, pressing down on old pain. Truong, the man she once trusted, had vanished without a word. Every way to reach him was gone, All that remained were emptiness, fear, and the child growing inside her. But life didn't allow her to stop. She still had Dewey, her little boy, waiting at home for dinner. The early season oranges were still green, their taste both sweet and sour. She knew they weren't ripe yet, but she had to sell them anyway. Some passers-by bought a few, others just shook their heads. She still smiled a forced smile that hid her exhaustion and the dull ache in her back. Her rough, cracked hands lifted each orange, wiped it on her sleeve, and placed it on the scale. The few bills she received made her heart tremble slightly. Every wrinkled note tucked carefully into her pocket meant one more day they could get by. In the crowd, no one noticed the quiet longing in her eyes. Deep down, she still hoped that maybe one day Truong would return, stand in the market, call her name, just like he used to promise. But the thought faded quickly, replaced by the harsh truth he was gone. The debts remained, her belly kept growing, and Dewey still needed milk school and a strong mother. By noon, Tieu had sold only a few kilos of oranges. Sweat covered her forehead, and her hands were swollen from the weight. Each time she bent down, the baby inside moved a gentle kick, as if reminding her not to stop. She placed a hand on her belly, her eyes glistening for a moment, then straightened up and kept calling out her pitch. When the sun reached its peak, light reflected off the oranges, still glistening with drops of water. One of her baskets was already half empty. She tied the rest together, wiped her sweat, and crossed to the next street. Her steps were slow, but steady. No one could see it, but in her tired eyes, there was a quiet kind of light, the light of someone who has endured the worst, yet still finds the strength to keep going for one simple reason. No matter how exhausted I am, I still have to take care of my child. That afternoon, the small room inside the clinic was unusually quiet. Truong's mother sat across from the doctor, her hands tightly clasped, worry flickering in her eyes. She didn't speak right away. Instead, she stared at the cup of tea that had already gone cold, as if trying to piece together her tangled thoughts. A few days earlier, when she visited Tieu, the girl Truong once loved, she noticed something strange. When she handed the girl a box of salmon, Tieu's face suddenly went pale, and she turned away, retching softly. At the time, the mother thought she was just unwell, but the image lingered in her mind, growing clearer with each passing day. The doctor listened carefully, then spoke gently. There were two possibilities, either a simple health issue or pregnancy. At that moment, her heart started pounding, and her hands trembled slightly. The name Truong, her son missing for months, flashed through her mind. Everything seemed to connect Tieu's distant eyes, her unusual silence, the repeated refusals to go for checkups. A heavy mix of fear and dread filled her chest. The doctor advised her to bring the girl in for an examination. She nodded, trying to hide her unease. As she left the room, the sound of her heels echoed down the long, cold hallway. Sunlight slanted through the window, casting her shadow onto the floor, a small figure carrying layers of worry and calculation. She stood still for a moment outside the door, then sighed softly. If Tieu really was pregnant, that child would be her family's blood, a baby who didn't even know where its father was. The thought made her heart twist with both anger and pity. Outside the clinic, she took out her phone and spoke firmly to her driver. Today, we're going to see that girl, she thought. This can't stay uncertain any longer. The car engine started. In that brief moment, she knew the visit ahead might change everything. Late in the afternoon, the last light of day slanted across the unfinished wooden beams. Tieu stood in front of the house under construction, the one Truong once said would be their first home together. The wind carried the smell of fresh wood and lime dust, a scent that hurt as much as it reminded her. Every brick, every nail mark on the wall still held traces of Truong's hands. He had drawn the design himself, had laughed beside her while picking out each plank. Now, there was only the sound of hammers, wood clashing, and an empty silence that cut deep. An old carpenter was still busy, working on the railing. Tieu set a bottle of water beside him, wiped the sweat from his forehead, then quietly looked around. Cold air blew through the unplastered walls, lifting strands of hair against her cheek. She didn't speak, just placed her hand on the rough beam, its coarse texture tightening her chest. The house was unfinished, just like her love with Truong, left incomplete in loss. She turned to leave, walking down the dusty road leading to the preschool. From afar, the laughter of children slowed her steps. When she saw Tieu, her face softened. The boy ran toward her wide-eyed, smiling so brightly it chased away her fatigue. Tieu bent down and pulled him into her arms. His small warmth made her want to cry, but she held it in. They walked home together along the narrow path. Tieu ran around the yard, his laughter ringing through the sound of rustling leaves. He climbed the old slide, slid down, then climbed again, over and over. Every clumsy move made Tieu both anxious and tender. She sat nearby, eyes fixed on him, afraid to look away even for a second. She wanted to protect him, to make up for the father he didn't have. Truong once promised that when the house was done, he would plant a vine of yellow flowers along the porch. Tieu picked a small flower and tucked it into his mother's hair. In that moment, Tieu smiled softly, though her eyes shimmered with tears. The fragile bloom was like the last bit of faith she still held on to, that somewhere Truong was still alive, and maybe one day he would come back. As the sun set, Tieu lifted her son into her arms. The wooden house in the distance glowed pale gold, swaying gently in the wind. In the silence, she could hear her heart beating fast, not only from longing, but from a faint hope that refused to die.